Merritt Lancaster, 38, stood frozen in her mother's living room, unable to process the words that had just shattered the Christmas atmosphere. "You're not my granddaughter, get out." Her mother had spat at 6-year-old Ava, whose eyes now brimmed with tears. The revelation that followed would unravel decades of family secrets, turning Merritt's understanding of blood loyalty upside down, and setting in motion a revenge plan that would eventually deliver the most unexpected justice. Before I continue with my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if family drama stories like mine resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life tales of betrayal and justice. Trust me, what happens next in this family revenge drama will have your jaw on the floor. Merritt had always prided herself on maintaining the perfect family image. Born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut, she came from what appeared to be the quintessential American family. Her father, Richard Lancaster, was a respected cardiologist at Hartford Hospital, while her mother, Eleanor, was the president of the local garden club and a fixture in their Episcopal Church's charity committee. Their colonial home in West Hartford's most prestigious neighborhood had been featured twice in regional home design magazines, and holidays at the Lancaster household were legendary for their picture-perfect execution. As the only child, Merritt had grown up under intense scrutiny and pressure to uphold the Lancaster family reputation. "Lancasters don't air dirty laundry," Eleanor would remind her daughter whenever Merritt showed too much emotion or questioned family decisions. "Appearances matter more than you think, darling." This mantra had been drilled into Merritt since childhood, creating an obsession with projecting perfection that she'd carried into adulthood. After graduating from Vassar with honors, Merritt had followed the script perfectly. She married James Porter, a promising young attorney from an equally respected Boston family, in a wedding that was featured in Connecticut Magazine. They purchased a tasteful Tudor revival home just 3 blocks from her parents, and quickly welcomed their daughter Ava, now 16. From the outside, they were the picture of multi-generational success. Educated, attractive, and firmly established in New England's upper-middle-class society, Eleanor Lancaster had always been particularly invested in her granddaughter, Ava. She paid for private piano lessons, exclusive summer camps, and insisted on weekly Sunday dinners where she would quiz Ava about her academic achievements and extracurricular activities. "You're a Lancaster, dear," she would say, straightening Ava's posture or correcting her table manners. "You carry our legacy." What no one outside the family knew was that the perfect facade had begun cracking years ago. James had gradually withdrawn from family life, working increasingly late hours and traveling frequently for case research. Merritt had suspected an affair for months but maintained a brave face, unwilling to admit failure or upset the carefully constructed image of their marriage. She'd been raised to believe that scandal was worse than unhappiness, and she silently endured the growing distance between them. Their marriage problems paled in comparison to what Merritt discovered 6 months before that fateful Christmas. While searching for an old family photo album in her parents' attic, she had stumbled upon a locked box hidden beneath floorboards in a corner. Curiosity piqued, she had managed to open it, discovering a stack of medical records and correspondence that made her blood run cold. The documents revealed that Eleanor Lancaster had undergone emergency surgery 39 years ago, exactly 1 year before Merritt's birth. The procedure had resulted in a complete hysterectomy due to complications from uterine fibroids. According to the medical files, Eleanor Lancaster could not possibly have given birth to Merritt or any other child. Stunned and disoriented, Merritt had replaced the documents and said nothing. For months, she'd carried this knowledge like a weight around her neck, observing her mother with new eyes. Who was she really? Why had they lied? And most importantly, who were her biological parents? The questions tormented her, but the Lancaster family code kept her silent. She'd even convinced herself that perhaps there was a medical explanation. something the documents hadn't revealed that could make sense of it all. Then came the text message that would set everything in motion. 3 weeks before Christmas, Merritt received an anonymous text: "Ask your mother who Catherine Bell is. The truth about your birth is worse than you imagine." The sender's number was blocked, and no further messages came despite Merritt's frantic replies. Catherine Bell. The name meant nothing to Merritt, yet it haunted her. She conducted discreet internet searches but found nothing connecting a Catherine Bell to her family. She considered asking her father, but his recent heart attack had left him frail, and she feared what stress might do to him. Instead, she decided to confront her mother at Christmas dinner, when the family would be together, but after her father had retired to bed. She never anticipated that the confrontation would explode as it did with Eleanor, lashing out at innocent Ava, instead of facing her own daughter's questions. Now, as Christmas decorations twinkled mockingly around them, and Ava's tears fell onto the antique Persian rug, Merritt realized the perfect family she had believed in was built entirely on lies. The foundations were crumbling, and the collapse would bury them all unless she found the courage to excavate the truth and rebuild something authentic from the ruins. Mom Merritt had asked after dinner once her father had gone upstairs to rest, "Who is Catherine Bell?" The color had drained from Eleanor's face, her carefully manicured hands trembling as she set down her crystal brandy snifter. "Where did you hear that name?" And then when Ava had innocently walked into the room, Eleanor had snapped, pointing at the confused teenager and spitting the words that would change everything. "You're not my granddaughter. Get out." The drive home from Eleanor's house that Christmas night was silent, except for Ava's occasional sniffles. James had left the dinner early, claiming a work emergency, a transparent excuse that no one bothered to challenge anymore. It was just Merritt and her daughter, both wrapped in layers of confusion and hurt. "Mom, what did Grandma mean?" Ava finally asked, as they pulled into their driveway, her voice small and uncertain. "Why would she say I'm not her granddaughter?" Merritt gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. How could she explain what she barely understood herself? "I don't know exactly, sweetheart, but I promise you this. We're going to find out. And whatever the truth is, it doesn't change who we are to each other." That night, after Ava had cried herself to sleep, Merritt sat in her home office, surrounded by family photo albums. She studied pictures of her childhood, scrutinizing her parents' faces for signs of deception. Had there been clues all along that she'd missed? In every Christmas, photo, birthday, celebration, and family vacation, Eleanor and Richard beamed with what looked like genuine pride and affection. If this was all an elaborate performance, they deserved Academy Awards for their decades-long roles. The next morning, Merritt called in sick to the university, where she taught art history, and drove straight to Hartford Hospital's records department. As Richard Lancaster's daughter, she had previously been given access to family medical records during his heart attack scare. She used this connection, now requesting information about her own birth. "I'm sorry, Miss Lancaster," the records clerk said after a lengthy search, "but there's no record of your birth here at Hartford Hospital." "That's impossible," Merritt insisted. "My birth certificate says Hartford Hospital, December 15, 1987. The clerk shook her head apologetically. "I've checked thoroughly. No Merritt Lancaster, no baby girl Lancaster on that date, nothing." Shaken, Merritt drove to the town hall to examine public records. There she discovered something even more disturbing. Her original birth certificate had been sealed and a new one issued when she was 3 months old. The amended certificate listed Eleanor and Richard as her parents, but the original document was unavailable without a court order. When Merritt returned home, she found a plain manila envelope on her doorstep, with no return address. Inside was a newspaper clipping from December 1987, detailing the tragic death of a young woman named Catherine Bell in a car accident. According to the article, Catherine had been 7 months pregnant at the time of her death, but emergency responders had managed to save the baby, a girl. Paperclipped to the article was a faded photograph of a young woman with Merritt's same auburn hair and distinctive gray-green eyes standing beside a much younger Richard Lancaster. They were smiling at each other with unmistakable intimacy. Merritt's hands trembled as she turned over the photograph. On the back, written in faded blue ink, were the words Richard and Kathy Summer Fellowship, 1987. Below the picture was a handwritten note on plain stationery. Your mother died so you could live. Eleanor stole you both from her. Ask about the Summer Medical Fellowship program and the arrangement made with Judge William Porter. William Porter. Her father-in-law's name. James's father had been a family court judge until his retirement 10 years ago. The connections were becoming clearer, revealing a conspiracy more extensive than Merritt could have imagined. That evening, Merritt drove to her father's private medical office after hours. Using the emergency key she'd always kept, she accessed his personal files, searching for anything related to Catherine Bell or the 1987 Summer Fellowship Program. In a locked filing cabinet, she found a worn leather journal with her father's initials. The journal detailed Richard's affair with Catherine, a brilliant medical student in his summer fellowship program. Their relationship had blossomed despite the significant age difference and Richard's marriage. When Catherine became pregnant, Richard had been torn between his established life with Eleanor and his love for Catherine and their unborn child. The most devastating entry came in December. Catherine died today. The baby survived. My daughter. Eleanor knows everything. Says she'll raise the child as her own to avoid scandal, but I must end all ties with Catherine's family. Judge Porter has agreed to help with the legal arrangements. God forgive me, but I've agreed. My daughter will have the Lancaster name and advantages, and no one need ever know about Catherine. Eleanor says this is best for everyone. Is it? Merritt sat on the office floor surrounded by the evidence of her true origins, finally understanding the foundation of lies her life had been built upon. She wasn't Eleanor's daughter. She was the product of her father's affair with a medical student who had died giving birth to her. Eleanor had raised her, not out of love, but out of determination to avoid scandal and maintain appearances. And somehow her father-in-law had been involved in the legal maneuvering that had erased Catherine Bell from her life. Had James known? Was that why he'd pursued her so determinedly in college, despite them having little in common? Was her entire marriage another layer of this elaborate deception? As dawn broke, Merritt made two decisions. First, she would uncover the full truth about Catherine Bell and the circumstances of her death and Merritt's subsequent adoption. Second, she would confront those who had conspired to hide her origins, beginning with her mother and father-in-law. What she didn't realize was that by pulling on this thread, she was about to unravel not just her own past, but a complex web of deception that would implicate nearly everyone she had ever trusted. New Year's Day found Merritt sitting across from her father-in-law in his book-lined study. William Porter, still imposing at 78, regarded her with the same judicial stare that had intimidated countless attorneys in his courtroom. I'm not sure what you expect me to say, Merritt, he said, swirling his scotch. Family matters from nearly 40 years ago are hardly relevant now. They're relevant to me, Merritt countered, placing Catherine Bell's obituary on the desk between them. You helped arrange my illegal adoption after my biological mother died. You helped erase her from existence. William's expression remained impassive, but his hand trembled slightly as he reached for his drink. You've always been prone to dramatics. The Lancasters gave you everything. Except the truth. I want to know everything about Catherine Bell and how she died. The old judge studied her for a long moment before sighing. Does James know you're here? No. Should he? Something flickered across William's face. Relief. Concern. This isn't just about you, Merritt. Some secrets protect more people than they hurt. I don't care who gets hurt anymore, Merritt replied, her voice hard. I've lived a lie for 38 years. I deserve the truth. After a tense silence, William opened his desk drawer and removed a thick file folder. Catherine Bell was brilliant, headed for a distinguished medical career. Her death was genuinely accidental, though the timing was convenient for some. Convenient, she was 7 months pregnant with me. Yes, and Richard was determined to leave Eleanor for her despite the scandal it would cause. Eleanor had just been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. A divorce would have meant losing her health insurance through the hospital. Richard felt trapped. Merritt struggled to process this new information. So my biological mother dies conveniently in a car accident, and everyone decides to pretend she never existed. William's eyes narrowed. Be careful with accusations, Merritt. The accident was thoroughly investigated. It was icy that night, and Catherine's car slid off Farmington Avenue into a tree. The emergency C-section saved you, but she hemorrhaged severely. And then what? Eleanor just decided to claim me as her own. It was more complicated than that. Eleanor offered a solution that would preserve Richard's reputation at the hospital, ensure her continued health coverage, and give you the Lancaster name and all its advantages. Judge Thomas, my predecessor, helped with the paperwork, and I ensured it remained sealed when I took the bench. A neat solution for everyone except Catherine and me, Merritt said bitterly. What about Catherine's family? Didn't they want to know me? William looked away. Catherine was estranged from her family. Conservative religious types from rural Pennsylvania, who disowned her when she became pregnant outside of marriage. They were informed of her death, but not about you surviving. Merritt felt sick. An entire family, grandparents, possibly aunts and uncles, who never knew she existed. And James, how does he fit into this? William's face hardened. James knows nothing about this. Leave him out of it. But Merritt recognized evasion when she saw it. You introduced us at that charity gala my sophomore year of college. You pushed us together. Why? Before William could answer, the study door opened, and James walked in, his expression unreadable. Dad, what's going on? The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. William straightened in his chair, suddenly looking every bit the intimidating judge he'd once been. Nothing that concerns you, son. Merritt and I were discussing some old family history. James looked between them, suspicion evident. Family history that requires my wife to visit secretly on New Year's Day. Merritt stood, gathering Catherine's obituary and the few documents William had shared. Not secretly. I just didn't think you'd be interested, given how disconnected you've been lately. Something dangerous flashed in James's eyes. Actually, I'm suddenly very interested. Dad, what family history exactly were you discussing with my wife? William shot Merritt a warning look before answering smoothly. Merritt recently discovered she was adopted. She's naturally curious about the circumstances. James froze, his face draining of color. Adopted? You never told me that. I never knew myself. Merritt replied, studying her husband's reaction carefully. Apparently, the Lancasters and Porters have been keeping secrets for decades. James turned to his father. You knew about this. It was a private family matter long before you met Merritt, William said dismissively. Nothing that affects you. But Merritt could see that it did affect James profoundly. His reaction was too extreme for mere surprise. James, what aren't you telling me? Instead of answering, James grabbed the obituary from Merritt's hand, staring at Catherine Bell's photograph. This is her, your biological mother, yes. Did you know about her? James's hand shook as he handed back the obituary. I need to make a phone call. He left the study abruptly, the door slamming behind him. William immediately stood. I think you should leave, Merritt. This has gone far enough. It's only beginning, she countered. What does James know that I don't? Go home to your daughter, William said firmly. Remember that whatever you uncover affects Ava too. The mention of Ava strengthened Merritt's resolve. Ava deserves the truth as much as I do. Eleanor made that clear when she rejected her own granddaughter. Eleanor is a complicated woman who's made difficult choices, William said, escorting Merritt firmly toward the front door. Judge her if you must, but remember, she raised you as her own when she could have sent you to foster care. As Merritt drove home, her mind raced. James's extreme reaction to Catherine's photo suggested he knew something significant. What was the connection between her husband and her biological mother, and why had William been so eager to end their conversation once James appeared? When she arrived home, she found Ava sitting on the porch despite the January cold, her face tear-stained. "Dad called," Ava said quietly. "He's not coming home. He said to tell you it's all connected and that he's sorry." Merritt sat beside her daughter, putting an arm around her shoulders. "Ava, I promise I'll explain everything once I understand it myself." Ava leaned into her mother's embrace. "Is it true what Dad said, that you found out you're adopted?" "Yes, sweetheart. I just found out. My biological mother died when I was born, so Grandma Eleanor isn't really your mom." "Is that why she said that awful thing to me at Christmas?" Merritt hesitated, unsure how much to share. "It's complicated, Ava. Eleanor raised me, but she's not my biological mother. That doesn't excuse what she said to you." Ava was quiet for a moment before asking, "If you're not really a Lancaster and Dad's leaving, who are we?" The question hit Merritt like a physical blow. Who were they, indeed? With her identity in question and her marriage apparently over what remained of the family they'd been, "We're still us, Ava, mother and daughter. That's one thing that will never change no matter what we discover." As they sat together on the cold porch, Merritt's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Catherine Bell didn't die by accident. Eleanor Lancaster knows the truth. So does your husband." 10 days after James's abrupt departure, Merritt found herself parked outside her childhood home, gathering courage for the confrontation ahead. She had tried calling her father multiple times, but Eleanor always intercepted, claiming Richard was too fragile for stressful conversations. Today, Merritt was done with excuses. The series of revelations over the past weeks had transformed her from a woman who avoided conflict into someone determined to uncover the truth at any cost. Her husband had disappeared, leaving only a cryptic note about fixing things. Her father-in-law refused further communication. And most disturbingly, she'd received more anonymous messages suggesting her biological mother's death had not been accidental. Mom Ava's voice came from the passenger seat, pulling Merritt from her thoughts. "Are you sure you want me here for this?" Merritt reached for her daughter's hand. "I need you with me. You're my strength, Ava. And besides, this concerns your heritage too." Together they walked the familiar path to the imposing front door of the Lancaster estate. Eleanor answered, looking immaculate as always, though her eyes widened in surprise at seeing them. "This is hardly a convenient time," she began, but Merritt pushed past her into the foyer. "I'm here to see Dad. Now." Eleanor's perfect facade cracked slightly. "He's resting." "The doctor said." "I don't care what the doctor said," Merritt interrupted. "I know everything, Eleanor. About Catherine Bell, about the fake adoption, about your arrangement with Judge Porter. Dad owes me the truth before it's too late." Eleanor flinched at Catherine's name but quickly recovered her composure. "Lower your voice. The neighbors." "I don't care about the neighbors or your reputation anymore," Merritt said, her voice rising. "Your obsession with appearances has destroyed lives. It ends today." Ava stood slightly behind her mother, witnessing this new, assertive version of Merritt with wide eyes. "You ungrateful girl," Eleanor hissed, her mask of gentility falling away completely. "After everything we did for you." "You mean after you erased my mother and stole me?" Merritt countered. A heavy silence fell, broken by the sound of a door opening upstairs. Richard Lancaster appeared at the top of the staircase, looking pale and much older than his 73 years. "I heard voices," he said weakly. "Merritt, is that you?" "Don't come down," Richard, Eleanor called sharply. "You know what the doctor said about stairs." But Richard was already making his slow, careful way down. "It's fine, Eleanor. It's time." Those two words, It's time, sent a visible shudder through Eleanor. She moved to the liquor cabinet, pouring herself a generous brandy with trembling hands. Richard reached the bottom of the stairs, breathing heavily from the exertion. His eyes found Ava, and his expression softened. "I'm sorry for what happened at Christmas, sweetheart. None of this is your fault." Ava nodded, uncertainly, stepping closer to Merritt. Richard gestured toward his study. "Let's talk in private." "Anything you have to say can be said in front of both of us," Merritt insisted, including Ava with a protective arm around her shoulders. Richard sighed but nodded. "Very well. Eleanor, will you join us?" "I most certainly will," Eleanor snapped, downing her brandy in one swallow and following them into the study. Once they were seated, Richard began slowly. "I loved Catherine Bell. She was brilliant, compassionate, everything a doctor should be. Our relationship was inappropriate given my position as her supervisor, but it was genuine." Eleanor made a derisive noise which Richard ignored. "When she became pregnant with you, Merritt, I planned to leave Eleanor and marry Catherine. It would have meant scandal, professional consequences, but Catherine and our child, you, were worth it to me." "Then what happened?" Merritt asked. Richard looked toward Eleanor, who stared stonily back at him. "Eleanor was diagnosed with breast cancer. If I divorced her, she would lose her health insurance through the hospital. The treatments would bankrupt her. So you chose her over Catherine and me," Merritt said flatly. "I chose to wait," Richard corrected. Catherine understood. "We agreed I would stay with Eleanor through her treatment, and once she recovered I would file for divorce. Catherine was planning to take a leave of absence after you were born, move in with a friend in Vermont until things were settled." Eleanor laughed bitterly. "Such a noble martyr, your Catherine." Richard's face hardened. "She was noble, Eleanor. Far more than you or I deserved." "If that was the plan," Merritt pressed, "what went wrong?" "The car accident." A heavy silence filled the room. Richard stared at his hands. "The night of the accident, Catherine called me in a panic. She said she'd received threatening notes, felt like she was being followed. I told her to come to the hospital, that I'd meet her there." His voice broke. "She never arrived." Merritt felt cold dread settling in her stomach. "The anonymous texts I've been receiving claim her death wasn't an accident." "Is that true, Richard? Don't you dare," Eleanor warned, suddenly alert. Richard looked at his wife with what appeared to be decades of accumulated resentment. "I've carried this burden for 38 years, Eleanor. No more." He turned back to Merritt. "The police investigation ruled it an accident. Black ice, poor visibility. But Catherine was an exceptionally careful driver, especially during her pregnancy. And there were inconsistencies in the accident report." "What kind of inconsistencies?" Merritt asked. "The angle of impact didn't match the supposed skid pattern. And Catherine had called me just 20 minutes before the crash, saying someone was following her, a black sedan with tinted windows." "What are you suggesting?" Richard took a shuddering breath. "I've never been able to prove anything. But Eleanor knew about my plans to leave once her treatment was complete. She also had connections through her family to people who solved problems discreetly." Eleanor stood abruptly. "This is absurd. You're suggesting I had something to do with that woman's death based on what? Your guilty conscience, trying to make yourself the victim after your affair." "Not just based on that," Richard said, quietly reaching into his desk drawer. He removed a faded envelope, handing it to Merritt. "This came a week after Catherine's funeral. No return address, no fingerprints, according to the private investigator I hired." Merritt opened the envelope with trembling fingers, extracting a single sheet of paper. The typewritten message was brief. "A tragic accident has solved your dilemma. The child will be raised as a Lancaster, and Eleanor's treatment will continue undisturbed. Everyone gets what they need. Consider the matter closed permanently." "You think Eleanor arranged Catherine's accident?" Merritt whispered, the enormity of it washing over her. "I've never known for certain," Richard admitted. But I received this note the same day. Eleanor suddenly suggested we adopt you and raise you as our own. She'd been adamantly against having children for our entire marriage, said they would interfere with her social commitments. Then suddenly, she wanted to claim Catherine's baby. Eleanor's face had gone white with fury. You kept that note all these years, planning this moment. I kept it because it was all I had left of the questions surrounding Catherine's death, Richard replied wearily. I've lived with the possibility that my wife had the woman I loved killed. That knowledge has been my prison sentence. Ava, who had been silent throughout, suddenly spoke up. If Great-Grandma Porter was Eleanor's mother, and Judge Porter helped with the illegal adoption, were the Porters involved in covering up the accident too? All three adults turned to look at the teenager in surprise. What did you say? Merritt asked. Dad told me last year when we were doing my family tree project, Ava explained. Judge Porter's wife was Grandma Eleanor's mother from her first marriage. That's how our families are connected. Dad said that's why he and Mom meeting wasn't really a coincidence. Richard and Eleanor exchanged alarmed looks. Is this true? Merritt demanded. Eleanor's mother remarried after her first husband died, Richard confirmed slowly. William Porter was her second husband, Eleanor's stepfather. But they weren't close. Eleanor was already an adult when they married. Close enough that he helped arrange my illegal adoption, Merritt pointed out. And close enough that his son happened to meet and marry me years later. Eleanor's composure cracked completely. It wasn't supposed to be this way. You were supposed to have a good life as a Lancaster. We gave you everything, except the truth, Merritt said. And now my husband, your stepbrother's son, has disappeared after learning about Catherine Bell. Why? What does James have to do with any of this? Before either Richard or Eleanor could answer, Merritt's phone rang. The screen showed a blocked number. With a sense of foreboding, she answered and put it on speaker. Merritt Lancaster, a formal voice asked. Yes, this is Detective Wilson, with the Hartford Police Department. We need you to come to Hartford Hospital immediately. Your husband, James Porter, has been in a serious accident. The room fell silent. Even Eleanor seemed shocked. Is he alive? Merritt managed to ask. He's in critical condition. Before losing consciousness, he asked specifically for you and said it was urgent. Please come as soon as possible. After ending the call, Merritt stood on shaky legs. This isn't over, she told Richard and Eleanor. Not by a long shot. As she and Ava hurried toward the door, Richard called after them. Merritt, wait. She turned impatiently. There's something else you should know, he said, ignoring Eleanor's warning glare. James came to see me 3 days ago. He was agitated, said he'd discovered something about Catherine's death in his father's private files. He was going to the district attorney with evidence. Merritt felt her blood run cold. And now he's had a serious accident. Just like my biological mother, Eleanor stepped forward. You can't possibly think I don't know what to think anymore. Merritt cut her off. But I'm going to find out the truth. All of it. As Merritt and Ava rushed to the hospital, the pieces were finally coming together. The Lancasters and Porters, connected by marriage, bound by secrets, willing to go to unthinkable lengths to protect their social standing and reputations. And at the center of it all, Catherine Bell, a brilliant young doctor who had loved the wrong man and paid with her life. Before we continue this shocking turn in the family drama, I'd love to know if anything similar has ever happened in your family. Has a secret ever come to light that changed everything you thought you knew? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. And if you're finding this story as intense as I did living through it, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real stories of family betrayal and justice. The next part of this story contains revelations that shook our community to its core. The antiseptic smell of the hospital brought back Merritt's earliest memories of visiting her father at work. The proud way Eleanor would parade her through the corridors, introducing Dr. Lancaster's daughter to colleagues and staff. Now those memories felt tainted, like photographs that had been skillfully altered to remove unwanted elements. A nurse directed Merritt and Ava to the surgical waiting room, where they found William Porter already seated, his imposing presence diminished by obvious worry. He stood when he saw them, his expression guarded. "What happened to James?" Merritt demanded without preamble. "Car accident," William replied tersely. "His car went off the road near Farmington River." The parallel to Catherine Bell's death was impossible to miss. "Just like my biological mother," Merritt said. "What a coincidence." William's jaw tightened. "This is hardly the time for your conspiracy theories, Merritt. My son is fighting for his life." "Your nephew," Ava corrected quietly. William turned to her sharply. "What did you say? If Eleanor is your stepdaughter, then James is actually your nephew, not just your son," Ava explained, her voice stronger now. "That would make Mom and Dad step-cousins. Isn't that right?" William looked between the teenage girl and Merritt with something close to fear in his eyes. "Who's been telling you these things?" "The truth has a way of emerging," Merritt said coldly. "What evidence did James find about Catherine Bell's death? What was he taking to the district attorney?" Before William could respond, a surgeon in blood-spattered scrubs approached. "Family of James Porter." William stepped forward. "I'm his father." "How is he?" "We've managed to stabilize him for now, but he's suffered significant trauma. The next 24 hours will be critical. The impact caused severe internal bleeding and a traumatic brain injury." "Can we see him?" Merritt asked. The surgeon hesitated. "He's heavily sedated, but yes, briefly. Only immediate family, please." William started to object when Ava spoke up. "I'm his daughter. I want to see my dad." The surgeon nodded, and a nurse led Ava and Merritt to the ICU. James lay unnaturally still, connected to a bewildering array of machines. His face was swollen and discolored, barely recognizable. Ava hung back, clearly shocked by her father's appearance. Merritt approached the bed slowly, leaning close to James's ear. "James, it's Merritt. Can you hear me?" No response. Not even a flicker of his eyelids. "The detective said you asked for me, that it was urgent. What were you going to tell me?" Only the mechanical hiss of the ventilator answered her. Ava joined her mother at the bedside, tentatively touching her father's hand. "Dad, it's Ava. Please be okay." As they stood there, a nurse entered to check James's vitals. "His personal effects are in that cabinet," she said, kindly pointing to a small locker beside the bed. "His clothes were cut off in the ER, but his wallet and phone should be there." After the nurse left, Merritt opened the cabinet. James's wallet, keys, and shattered phone lay in a plastic hospital bag. The phone's screen was completely destroyed, but when Merritt pressed the power button, it vibrated in her hand. "We need to get this fixed," she told Ava. "Whatever James discovered might be on here." A throat cleared behind them. William Porter stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "The doctors want us to leave now. James needs rest." Merritt slipped James's personal items into her purse before William could notice. "We'll be back in the morning," she said, guiding Ava toward the door. William blocked their exit, his imposing frame filling the doorway. "Whatever you think you know, Merritt, be careful how you proceed. Family matters should stay within the family." Merritt met his gaze steadily. "That's exactly what I intend to do. Protect what remains of my family. Ava and I are leaving now." William reluctantly stepped aside, but his warning hung in the air like a physical threat. Back in the car, Ava turned to her mother. "Mom, I'm scared. What if whoever hurt Dad comes after us too?" Merritt gripped the steering wheel tightly. "We're going to be careful, Ava. Very careful. But we're also going to find the truth. It's the only way we'll ever be safe." Instead of driving home, Merritt headed to a small electronics repair shop owned by her former student, Dev Patel. Despite the late hour, the lights were still on and Dev welcomed them in. "Professor Lancaster." What brings you here so late? Merritt explained the situation in general terms, presenting James's shattered phone. I need to access what's on this. It's urgent. Dev examined the device. Screen's destroyed, but the motherboard looks intact. I can transfer the data to another device, but it might take a couple of hours. Is it password protected? Merritt hesitated, then typed in Ava's birth date, James's standard password. The phone accepted it immediately. We'll wait, she told Dev. This can't wait until morning. While Dev worked, Merritt and Ava sat in the small waiting area, both lost in their thoughts. Mom Ava finally said, "Do you think Dad knew about Catherine Bell and everything I don't know, sweetheart? But I think he discovered something recently. Something dangerous enough that someone wanted to silence him." 3 hours later, Dev emerged with a tablet. "I've transferred everything." The phone was pretty smashed, but I recovered most of the data. Merritt thanked him profusely, offering to pay extra for the emergency service, but Dev refused. "You wrote me a recommendation letter that got me into MIT, professor. This is the least I can do." In the car, Merritt and Ava examined James's data. Most of it seemed routine: emails, work, documents, photos. But a folder labeled CB Investigation caught their attention immediately. Inside were dozens of files, scanned police reports, medical examiner notes, and photographs of Catherine Bell's accident scene that had never been made public. James had also compiled financial records showing a payment of $50,000 from a shell company linked to Eleanor Lancaster's family trust to a man named Victor Mosley in December 1987, just days before Catherine's accident. Most damning was an audio file dated just 1 week earlier. Merritt played it with trembling fingers. "This is James Porter," her husband's voice began. "I'm recording this conversation with Victor Mosley, former private investigator regarding the death of Catherine Bell in 1987. An older, raspy voice responded, "I told you on the phone I don't know nothing about that, Mr. Mosley. I have bank records showing you received $50,000 from the Whitcomb Family Trust in December 1987. Eleanor Lancaster was born Eleanor Whitcomb. The payment was made 3 days before Catherine Bell's fatal car accident." Silence then. "That was a long time ago. Statute of limitations, not for murder, Mr. Mosley." "There's no statute of limitations for murder." More silence, then the older voice resigned. "I didn't kill nobody. I was just supposed to scare her. Follow her, make her nervous. Send some threatening notes. The idea was to get her to leave town before the baby came. But something went wrong. I was following her that night like usual. She was driving careful 'cause of the ice. Then this other car comes out of nowhere, forces her off the road. I saw the whole thing. It wasn't an accident. Who was driving the other car, I don't know for sure. But after I saw it parked at the Whiting estate. That was Eleanor Lancaster's brother's place. Alexander Whitcomb, Eleanor's brother, ran Catherine Bell off the road. That's my guess. I didn't ask questions. I got my money, and I kept my mouth shut. Until now." The recording ended there. Merritt and Ava sat in stunned silence. Mom Ava finally whispered, "Does this mean Great Aunt Eleanor had your real mom killed?" Merritt stared at the tablet, her mind racing. "Not directly, but she and her brother arranged it. And William Porter helped cover it up afterward with the fake adoption. And now someone tried to kill Dad for finding this out." Merritt nodded grimly. "We need to be very careful. Let's not go home tonight." Instead, they checked into a small motel under cash. Before turning in, Merritt made a copy of all James's files and emailed them to her university account and to Dev Patel for safekeeping. "Tomorrow," she told Ava, "we take this to the district attorney, just like James planned to do." The Hartford County District Attorney's office was housed in an imposing stone building downtown. Merritt and Ava arrived early the next morning. having stopped to purchase prepaid phones after hearing on the news that James's accident was being investigated as a potential crime. The receptionist initially tried to turn them away without an appointment, but Merritt's insistence that she had evidence related to 2 attempted murders finally gained them access to Assistant District Attorney Sophia. Washington. Washington, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, listened impassively as Merritt laid out the complex story and presented James's evidence. "Let me be sure I understand," Washington said when Merritt finished. "You're alleging that nearly 40 years ago Eleanor Lancaster and her brother Alexander Whitcomb arranged the death of Catherine Bell to prevent a scandal and protect family interests. And now someone, possibly the same people, attempted to silence your husband because he discovered evidence of this crime." "Yes," Merritt confirmed. "The Lancasters and Porters have been covering up Catherine's murder for decades. My entire existence has been part of that cover-up." Washington tapped her pen thoughtfully. "The recording of Victor Moseley is compelling, but it's hearsay without his direct testimony. Do you know where we can find him?" "His address is in James's files," Merritt said, opening the relevant document. "He lives in a retirement community in Florida now." "I'll have someone bring him in for questioning," Washington promised. "In the meantime, these financial records and the inconsistencies in the original accident investigation give us enough to open a formal inquiry." "What about our safety?" Merritt asked, glancing at Ava. "If they tried to kill James, I'll assign a protection detail immediately," Washington assured her. "And I suggest you both stay somewhere unexpected for the next few days." As they left the DA's office, Merritt's new phone rang, the hospital calling about James. His condition had stabilized, but he remained in a coma. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about recovery, but couldn't provide a timeline. "We should visit him," Ava said as they walked to their car under the watchful eye of a plainclothes officer. "It might not be safe," Merritt worried. "Whoever did this might be watching the hospital." "But what if he wakes up? He'll think we abandoned him." Merritt relented, knowing how much Ava needed to see her father. They drove to the hospital with their police escort following discreetly. James looked marginally better than the previous night, some of the swelling in his face reduced. The room was empty of other visitors, for which Merritt was grateful. She checked her watch. Visiting hours had just begun, so William Porter was likely still at home. Ava sat beside her father, talking softly to him about normal teenage things, school projects, her friends, a movie she wanted to see when he was better. The normality of it broke Merritt's heart. Whatever James's involvement in the family's twisted history, he was still Ava's father. A sound at the door made them both turn. Eleanor Lancaster stood there looking uncharacteristically disheveled, her perfect appearance frayed at the edges. "What are you doing here?" Merritt demanded, instinctively moving to stand between Eleanor and Ava. "I came to see James," Eleanor replied, her voice lacking its usual imperious tone. "Richard told me what happened." "You mean you came to see if your plan worked?" Merritt accused. "Did you arrange this accident too, just like you did for Catherine Bell?" Eleanor flinched. "I had nothing to do with James's accident. I would never harm family." "Catherine Bell was carrying your husband's child, your granddaughter. That didn't stop you from having her killed." Eleanor stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind her. "You don't understand what it was like. The scandal would have destroyed everything we'd built. Richard was chief of cardiology. I was on the hospital board. We had social obligations, responsibilities. So you had her murdered," Merritt said flatly. "I never intended." Eleanor stopped herself, glancing at Ava. "This isn't an appropriate conversation to have in front of the child." "I'm not a child," Ava said firmly. "And I deserve to know the truth about my family just as much as Mom does." Eleanor's composure cracked further. "You foolish girl. There are consequences to uncovering secrets that were buried for good reason." "Are you threatening us?" Merritt asked incredulously. "I'm warning you," Eleanor corrected. You've spoken to the authorities, haven't you? Do you have any idea what this will do to our family? To Richard, he won't survive the scandal. Richard already knows most of it, Merritt countered. He's suspected for years that you were involved in Catherine's death. Eleanor laughed bitterly. Richard is a coward who chose convenience over love. He could have left me for Catherine at any time. My cancer went into remission 6 months after her accident. He stayed because it was easier than starting over with a baby and a younger woman who would eventually outshine him professionally. The harsh assessment of her father hit Merritt hard. Was that true? Had Richard been relieved when Catherine died? Why are you really here? Eleanor Merritt asked wearily. Eleanor straightened some of her usual authority, returning. William called me. He said you took James's phone and files. Whatever you think you've discovered, it's not too late to keep this within the family. For Ava's sake, if not your own. It's too late for that, Merritt said. The district attorney already has copies of everything. Victor Mosley is being brought in for questioning. The truth is going to come out. Eleanor went pale. Mosley is still alive and talking. James recorded him confessing that Alexander forced Catherine off the road that night. Your brother murdered my biological mother on your behalf. Alex was always impulsive, Eleanor said faintly. He thought he was protecting me. By committing murder, Eleanor sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 72 years. You can't possibly understand the world we lived in then. Appearances were everything. A divorce would have been scandalous enough, but for Richard to leave me during cancer treatment for a pregnant medical student half his age, we would have been social pariahs. Alex took matters into his own hands. And you let him, Merritt accused. Then you covered it up and stole Catherine's baby, me, to maintain your perfect facade. You let a murderer go free for 40 years. Alexander died 12 years ago, Eleanor said dismissively. Heart attack on his yacht. He's beyond earthly justice now. But you're not, Merritt pointed out. Conspiracy to commit murder has no statute of limitations. Neither does evidence tampering or obstruction of justice. For the first time, real fear showed in Eleanor's eyes. You would send your own mother to prison, after everything I sacrificed to raise you. You're not my mother, Merritt said coldly. You're the woman who had my actual mother killed, and then pretended to raise me out of the goodness of your heart. You never loved me. I was just another accessory in your perfect life. Eleanor stood abruptly. You ungrateful! She was interrupted by the door opening again. Assistant DA Washington entered accompanied by 2 police officers. Eleanor Lancaster Washington asked, though it was clearly a formality. I'm Assistant District Attorney Sophia Washington. These officers have some questions for you regarding the death of Catherine Bell in 1987 and the recent accident involving James Porter. Eleanor drew herself up with dignity. This is preposterous. I'm a pillar of this community. My family has donated millions to Hartford Hospital. Mrs. Lancaster, one of the officers, said firmly, please come with us. We can do this here or at the station, but we will be having this conversation. As Eleanor was led away, she turned back to Merritt. This isn't over. The Porters won't let this happen. William has judges, politicians in his pocket. Not anymore, Washington said, holding up her phone. William Porter is currently being questioned as well. We have evidence suggesting he used his position as a judge to falsify adoption records and conceal evidence in a homicide investigation. After they left, Merritt collapsed into the chair Eleanor had vacated. The enormity of what was happening overwhelmed her. The carefully constructed world of the Lancasters and Porters was crumbling, decades of secrets and lies exposed to the harsh light of truth. Ava took her mother's hand. Are you okay, Mom? Merritt squeezed her daughter's hand. I don't know. I've spent my entire life believing I was someone I'm not. Everything I thought I knew about myself, my family, my marriage. It was all built on lies. Not everything, Ava said firmly. You're still my mom. That's real. Merritt smiled through tears at her daughter's wisdom. Yes, that's very real. And it's the only thing that matters now. A soft groan from the bed interrupted them. James's eyelids fluttered, then opened. He blinked several times, confusion evident in his gaze as it settled on Merritt and Ava. James Merritt leaned forward anxiously. "Can you hear me?" He nodded weakly, then winced at the movement. His voice when it came was a raspy whisper. "You found it. Your investigation?" "Yes. We took it to the district attorney. They're questioning Eleanor and William now." Relief washed over James's battered face. "Not accident. Someone ran me off road." "We know," Merritt assured him. "The police are investigating it as attempted murder." James closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with obvious effort. "Need tell you. William knew everything. Helped cover up Catherine's death." James nodded slightly. "And more. He arranged purse our meeting." "The charity gala in college?" Merritt asked, confused. "Why insurance?" James whispered. "If you ever discovered truth, family connection, keep you quiet." The manipulation was breathtaking in its calculation. William had engineered their marriage as a safeguard against Merritt ever discovering and exposing her true origins. "Did you know," Merritt had to ask, "when we met, when we married? Did you know who I really was?" James shook his head weakly. "Found out last year. Dad's private files. Couldn't tell you. Afraid. Afraid of what? What it would do to us. To Ava." His gaze shifted to his daughter. "Sorry, sweetheart." Ava moved closer, carefully taking her father's hand. "It's okay, Dad. We're going to be okay." James's eyes drifted closed again, exhaustion claiming him. A nurse entered to check his vitals, informing them that he needed rest but was showing positive signs of recovery. In the hallway outside James's room, Merritt's phone rang. It was Ada Washington. "Miss Lancaster, we've made significant progress. Victor Mosley has been located and is cooperating fully. He's provided a sworn statement confirming Alexander Whitcomb's role in forcing Catherine Bell off the road, as well as Eleanor Lancaster's knowledge of the plan." "And William Porter?" Merritt asked. "Arrested on multiple charges, including evidence tampering and obstruction of justice. We're also investigating his conduct in numerous other cases during his time on the bench. This could be the largest judicial corruption case in Hartford's history." Merritt felt lightheaded. "What about Eleanor? In custody. We've frozen the assets of both families, pending further investigation. I should warn you, this will become very public very quickly." "Are you prepared for that?" Merritt looked at Ava, who nodded resolutely. "Yes, we're prepared. The truth matters more than reputation. That's a lesson the Lancasters and Porters never learned." 6 months later, Merritt stood in the small cemetery in rural Pennsylvania, placing flowers on a grave she had only recently discovered. The simple headstone read, "Catherine Bell, 1965 to 1987, beloved daughter and scholar." Beside her stood an elderly couple, Catherine's parents, Harold and Martha Bell. Finding them had been challenging. They had moved multiple times over the decades, eventually settling in a retirement community in Arizona. Their initial response to Merritt's letter had been skeptical disbelief, but DNA testing had confirmed what Merritt's heart already knew. She was Catherine's daughter. "She would have been so proud of you," Martha said softly, her weathered hand clasping Merritt's. "A professor just like she wanted to be." "I wish I could have known her," Merritt replied, studying the few photographs the Bells had shared. Images of a vibrant young woman with Merritt's same auburn hair and gray-green eyes. "You have her determination," Harold observed, "the way you uncovered the truth despite everyone trying to hide it." That's pure Catherine. The past months had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and personal upheaval. Eleanor Lancaster and William Porter had both been charged with multiple felonies related to Catherine's death and the subsequent cover-up. Richard Lancaster, whose health had deteriorated rapidly following the revelations, had agreed to testify against Eleanor in exchange for immunity, providing crucial evidence about the events surrounding Catherine's death. James had recovered slowly from his injuries, though the traumatic brain damage left lingering effects on his speech and mobility. The investigation confirmed that his accident had been orchestrated by one of William Porter's former bailiffs, acting on William's orders after discovering James had been compiling evidence. The man had confessed, turning state's evidence against William in exchange for a reduced sentence. The scandal had rocked Hartford society, exposing decades of corruption and influence peddling that extended far beyond the Lancasters and Porters. Several judges appointed during William's tenure were under investigation, and numerous convictions were being reviewed for potential misconduct. Merritt had taken a leave of absence from the university, needing time to process her transformed identity and to support Ava through the tumult. They had moved out of the Tudor Revival home, unable to live surrounded by memories of a life built on deception. Their modest new apartment represented a fresh start. James had moved into a rehabilitation facility focusing on his recovery. His relationship with Merritt remained complicated. The marriage was effectively over, but they maintained a civil connection for Ava's sake. The revelation that their union had been orchestrated as a control mechanism had destroyed whatever genuine feelings might have once existed between them. "Will you come visit us in Arizona?" Martha asked as they left the cemetery. "We have so much catching up to do. 38 years of a granddaughter's life to learn about." "I'd like that," Merritt said sincerely. "And I'd love for you to know Ava. She's an amazing young woman." Catherine's granddaughter, Harold said wonderingly. "A part of our daughter living on. It's a miracle we never dared hope for." Back at their hotel, Ava was waiting, having opted to give Merritt private time with the Bells for this first cemetery visit. She looked up eagerly when Merritt returned. "How was it? Are they nice? Do they want to meet me?" Merritt smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. "It was emotional but good. They're wonderful people who have been carrying their grief for decades. And yes, they're very excited to meet you." Ava nodded thoughtfully. "So they're my great-grandparents technically." "Yes, though family relationships feel different now, don't they? Less about technical connections and more about genuine ones." "Like us," Ava said simply. "Exactly like us," Merritt agreed, hugging her daughter close. That evening, as they packed for their return flight to Connecticut, Merritt reflected on the journey of the past year. The perfect family facade she had clung to for so long had been completely destroyed. Eleanor Lancaster, the woman who had raised her, was awaiting trial for her role in her biological mother's death. Richard Lancaster, the father who had chosen convenience and appearances over truth, was a shell of himself cooperating with prosecutors while his health failed. The Porter family's multi-generational legal dynasty was in ruins. Yet amid this devastation, something authentic had emerged. Merritt had discovered her true origins and connected with Catherine's parents, who had welcomed her with open arms. She had learned that her biological mother had been brilliant, compassionate, and courageous, qualities she hoped she had inherited along with Catherine's auburn hair and gray-green eyes. Most importantly, the unbreakable bond between Merritt and Ava had proven to be the one true thing in a landscape of lies. Throughout the upheaval, they had been each other's constant support, navigating the transformed terrain of their lives together. "Mom," Ava said as they finished packing, "are you ever going to change your name? You know, since you're not really a Lancaster." Merritt had considered this question repeatedly over the past months. "I've thought about taking the Bell name to honor Catherine. But the truth is, names are just labels. What matters is who we choose to be, not what we're called." "That's deep," Ava said, with a typical teenager's mix of sarcasm and sincerity. Merritt laughed. Maybe. But after living someone else's idea of who I should be for 38 years, I'm finally figuring out who I actually am. The name seems less important than that journey. Well, I think Catherine would be proud of you, Ava said. Standing up to the Lancasters and Porters, exposing their lies even though it blew up your whole life. That took courage. It did, Merritt acknowledged. But I had excellent motivation. She gave her daughter a meaningful look. Me, of course you. The moment Eleanor rejected you at Christmas, something fundamental shifted for me. I could tolerate lies about my own identity, but I couldn't stand by while those lies hurt you. You deserved better than to inherit a legacy built on deception and cruelty. Ava considered this. So in a weird way, Eleanor telling me to get out was actually the best thing that could have happened. Talk about karma. The ultimate karma, Merritt agreed. Her moment of cruelty set in motion the very revelations she'd spent decades trying to prevent. If she'd just been kind to you that day, who knows how long the secrets might have stayed buried. The next morning before heading to the airport, Merritt made one last visit to Catherine's grave alone. She placed her hand on the cool stone, feeling a connection to the woman who had given her life. I found the truth, she said softly. It took 38 years, but justice is finally coming. I wish I could have known you, but I'm trying to live in a way that would make you proud, with courage and integrity, valuing truth over appearances. As she stood there, Merritt felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. The journey wasn't over. The trials were still ahead, and rebuilding her life would take time. But for the first time since that Christmas dinner 6 months ago, she felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Not a future built on Lancaster and Porter expectations and appearances, but one she would define for herself, with Ava by her side, and Catherine's legacy in her heart. The perfect family she had believed in had been an elaborate fiction, but something more valuable had emerged from its ruins. Authenticity, truth, and the kind of love that couldn't be manufactured or manipulated. In losing her false identity, Merritt had finally found herself. I hope this story resonated with all of you watching. Family secrets can be devastating, but the truth, however painful, offers a path to healing that lies never can. If you've experienced family betrayal or discovered unexpected truths about your own origins, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Please like this video if it moved you, subscribe to my channel for more real-life family drama stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that authentic connections matter more than perfect appearances. Thank you for coming on this journey with me, and remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the one we're born into. The greatest life lesson from my family revenge story is that truth, however delayed, eventually finds its way to the light.